The Laṅkāvatāra Sūtra, Chapter 2, Part 12. The Bhagavan told Mahāmati, "There are followers of some paths attached to the projection of nothingness, who imagine the non-existence of rabbit horns when what causes them ends, and that, as with the non-existence of rabbit horns, the same is true of everything else. And there are followers of other paths, Mahāmati, who distinguish each and everything in terms of elements, tendencies, particles, substances, or shapes, and having seen that there are no such things as rabbit horns, become attached to the conception that ox horns exist. Mahāmati, because they are given to such dualistic extremes, they don't understand what is nothing but mind and nourish instead the projection of realms of their own conception. But such things as their body, their possessions, and the world around them are nothing but projections of sensation. Mahāmati, this is true of the existence of all things. They transcend existence and non-existence. You should not imagine such things. Mahāmati, since they transcend existence and non-existence, someone who thinks rabbit horns don't exist suffers from a misconception. They should not think that rabbit horns don't exist, because such a view would be relative, and if they were to analyze whatever does exist into the finest particles, they would not find anything there. Mahāmati, because it would be outside the realm of Buddha knowledge, you should not imagine that ox horns exist. Mahāmati then asked the Buddha, "Bhagavan, if someone imagines something as not existing, is it because they see it as not arising that they subsequently reason, since their observation doesn't result in its discrimination, it doesn't exist?" The Buddha replied, "Not so, Mahāmati. It isn't because their observation doesn't result in its discrimination that they say something doesn't exist. And why not? It is because discriminations arise in dependence on something. They arise in dependence on horns. And because a discrimination arises in dependence on horns, they are said to be its cause. Hence, it is not because observation doesn't result in their discrimination that they say horns do not exist. Rather, it is because they are neither separate nor not separate. Mahāmati, if the discrimination is separate from the horns, its occurrence is not dependent on the horns. And if it isn't separate, it is dependent on them. But no matter how minutely you analyze and examine them, you cannot find anything there. Also, because it isn't separate from the horns, it doesn't exist by itself. But if neither exists by itself, on what basis do we say it doesn't exist? Mahāmati, if it doesn't exist, then the horns don't exist. But you should not think that rabbits do not have horns on the basis of observation. Mahāmati, it is because there is no direct cause that arguments in favor of existence or non-existence cannot be proved. Mahāmati, there are followers of other paths who are attached to such things as form and space as having shape and location. Although they aren't able to distinguish space, they say space exists apart from form, and they thus give rise to the projection of their separation. Mahāmati, space is form. It is part of the material elements, and form is space, Mahāmati. But in order to establish the existence of which supports and which is supported, they separate space and form. Although their individual characteristics differ, Mahāmati, where the four material elements are present, they neither occupy space, nor do they exist without space. Likewise, Mahāmati, oxen are observed with horns and rabbits without horns. But Mahāmati, if you were to grind ox horns into the finest particles and didn't stop analyzing those particles for even a moment, Could you say they did not exist based on what you saw? Anything else you might examine would be the same. The Bhagavan then told Mahāmati Bodhisattva, you should avoid projections that view rabbit horns or ox horns, space or form, as separate. You and the other bodhisattvas should reflect on projections as perceptions of your own mind. And in whatever lands you might find yourselves, teach bodhisattvas about the perceptions of their own minds.